All right, welcome everybody. So for today's demo, I have two recipes that we're going to do for you. Now I know this is the cookies, bars, and sheets unit, and this is not really a cookie, but I got a couple of things we'll get to in a second, right? So first thing, I'm in the kitchen with my father. All right, so this is Mr. Robert Durazi. How many years have you been cooking / being a pastry chef for?
45.
So 45 years of experience. And where did you go to school?
Culinary Institute of America.
Right, so a CIA grad. We're very fortunate growing up for myself to have somebody around with such expertise. Didn't always take advantage of that, but we'll have that conversation another day. So one of the things I was very lucky growing up was to have really great Christmas cookies. Having a father who's a pastry chef, a lot of cool things in the house, a lot of great pastries. But Christmas time was always a time we had a lot of really cool things. Now, the Christmas platter that would always come out every year, my favorite treat on that platter actually wasn't even a cookie. Even more, he didn't even make it. Right? Who made that one?
Your mother.
Right. My mother did a few cookies to bulk up the tray, and one of the things that she did was called a Scotch Crispy. It was absolutely my favorite thing on the Christmas cookie platter every year. Sorry, Dad. So we're going to show you that today. Very simple recipe. How many ingredients?
3.
3, or actually we've increased it by 1 because we've got 2 different types of cereal.
Right.
So it's 4. We've got 4 ingredients for this really awesome treat. So I'm going to show you that, and then I'm going to actually do the old-fashioned classic Rice Krispie treat as well. So come in here for a second. We've got our ingredients. So we've got, very simple, peanut butter, butterscotch chips, and cocoa and Rice Krispies. Now the original recipe was just Rice Krispies. We've added the Cocoa Crispy in because it just adds another element of flavor, and actually really tasty. So have all the cereal measured out already. So that's 6 cups of cereal, 1 bag, which is an 11-ounce bag of the chips, and then 1 cup of peanut butter. So if we come on in here, we've got the peanut butter already going. You can go in there. I'll let you do the work. All right, so we've got the peanut butter is already melting down over a double boiler. All right, now what's the purpose for the double boiler?
So you don't burn it.
All right, so again, peanut butter.
Safer way to melt it.
Peanut butter has a high sugar content, and anytime you're working with something that's got a lot of sugar, it's pretty easy to burn it. All right, so got our peanut butter melted down. I'm going to turn that flame down just a little bit. Water's nice and hot.
Scissors in the drawer. Third one.
So what happens when you work in somebody else's kitchen? I might have grown up in this house, but I haven't been here in a long time. Well, I haven't cooked here in a long time, I should say that. Alright, so chips go into the pot. And now we're going to go ahead and melt. Alright, so at this point now, the butterscotch chips are melted into the peanut butter. Right, we're looking for a nice smooth consistency. We're going to go ahead and take that off the fire. Get that out of there for you. Alright, so next, take it away, Chef.
Next we're going to just add in the Krispies. Blend them in.
I think I just figured out what I can buy you for Christmas.
Exactly.
A bigger mixing bowl.
A bigger mixing bowls.
Now once we get this all blended, so really what we're trying to do here is really coat the cereal with the peanut butter and butterscotch mixture and get it really nicely coated so that they are going to come together as it cools. Get a little closer, get a nice little close-up look. And it's okay. You don't have to worry about the pieces breaking, right? That's all going to be fine. It's going to really come together nice. It's going to have a really nice finished crunchy texture, but still the smoothness of that peanut butter and the butterscotch chips are going to come through as well.
Okay, those look pretty well done. Now we're going to transfer it to the sheet pan, which is lined with parchment paper. And I didn't do this yet because I wanted you to see it. Is just spray a little underneath the paper, so it does help to stick a little bit.
If you don't spray, the parchment paper tends to roll back. So by spraying, it's going to just help keep the parchment paper sealed onto the pan. This was something as a kid that I always had to stay away from because I would be eating this before it even made its way to the pan.
So one time we could get him to help clean up.
Oh, he's got jokes now. There we go. And you see where I get it from, everybody. So really important, like everything else we do, right? Use that spatula, get everything out of the pan. You paid for all of that cereal and peanut butter and butterscotch. You want to make sure you use it. All right, so what are we doing now?
Just going to spread it out, and then we'll let it cool off. And the trickiest part of this after that is trying to cut it. If it gets too cold, because you can put it in your refrigerator to speed up the chilling, but if it gets too cold, then it gets kind of hard and it tends to break when you cut it. So you want to get it to kind of a room temperature where you can have a little bit better success.
Interesting. Now, I always remember as a kid, I always remember stealing this from out of the refrigerator.
Yeah.
And beware, after they were cut, I would always find my way to wherever they were trying to hide these from me and treat myself. Now, as an adult, when the Christmas cookies are done every year, I always get a little container of Scotch Krispies just for me, which somehow my family tends to get a hold of as well. So you see, this is a very, very simple, we'll call this a confection, right? More of a confection than a cookie. Big, important step right here.
Lay a piece over it, and then just so you can smooth it out a little better. I mean, the other way can be more fun, because then you get to lick your hands, but it's not exactly sanitary.
All right, safety and sanitation. This is not going to be cooked again, right? So that makes it a ready-to-eat food, and therefore we do have to be mindful of sanitation when we're doing this. So by putting the piece of paper on the top, now you might ask, could I use gloves? You could, but you're still going to stick to the glove. By using the parchment paper, you're able to get a nice flat surface like that.
And we don't have that on your hands.
And you don't have to wash your hands so much when you're done. All right, excellent. So we'll come back in a little bit once that cools, and we'll cut that and show you what it looks like when it's... All right, so now we're going to talk about Rice Krispie treats, right? So Rice Krispies, on the back of the box of Rice Krispies, on almost every box, you're going to find the recipe for Rice Krispie treats. And it is a very, very simple recipe to make, but one that you can actually get wrong. So we're going to start off. I have my ingredients, okay? So I have my marshmallows ready to go. I have my cereal, right? Those Rice Krispies already portioned out, right? Already scaled. Butter, which I have cut here. So it's 10 ounces of marshmallows, 6 cups of cereal, and 3 tablespoons of butter. Okay, so another very simple, just a small amount of ingredients to make something that really is very tasty and people like. So I'm going to go ahead. I have my pot set up here on the stove. We'll go ahead and get that situated. Now, you might think that's a really large pot for a very small amount of butter, but we're going to do everything in this one pot. We're going to do all of it in one pot and then go right to a pan, which I already have ready to go. I'll show you that in a moment. All right, so I'm going to put that butter in the bottom of the pot. I sprayed the pot previously with a little bit of non-stick cooking spray, and just so that everything's coated and the marshmallow and the cereal don't stick so much to the sides. All right, just grab my towel. So we start melting that down. Now once the butter is melted down, and this is an interesting point here. So most people, when they make this, they get the butter just to the point of melting and then throw the marshmallows in and start melting those down. I actually like to let the butter cook a little bit, right? As the butter cooks and it starts to brown just a little bit, right? What's happening is the fat that's in the butter actually starts to caramelize a little bit, right? You start to develop some of the flavor of the butter, and you get a more nutty flavor from the butter, which is going to give a little bit more of a complex flavor to the entire mixture, right? So I don't want to burn it, right? You're just going to start to brown it. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. All right, so let's come on in here, let's take a look. We can see the butter starting to melt. All right, you can hear that sizzling that's starting to happen in there, right? There is a water content in butter, so we're starting to kind of cook some of that water out a little bit. Again, being careful, we don't want to burn it, right? So you want to watch the temperature on your stove. A medium high is more than enough on your flame, right? If you go too high, it's going to get too hot. The butter's going to burn really, really quickly. We don't want that. We want it to take a little bit of time so that we don't run the risk of burning. All right, so this is melted. So right now, come in and take a look at this. This is melted. I could at this point go ahead and add those marshmallows in. I'm going to let it go just another second. And you'll actually notice that the color of the butter starts to get a little bit deeper. Right, you'll notice it gets a little more golden, and that golden brown color means that we're going to get some excellent, excellent flavor out of there. All right, so just another second on that. Now the marshmallows. So this is like your standard, regular size marshmallow. You can use the mini marshmallows as well. In fact, the mini marshmallows sometimes are better because they melt a little bit quicker. All right, so now you kind of come in here and take a look at this butter. You can start to see on the sides of the pot, you get a little bit of that browning going on the bottom. I'm ready to go ahead and add my marshmallows. So we're going to get those in there. And we'll just start to mix the marshmallow with the hot butter. I'm going to turn that flame to a low flame, because now you got to remember, marshmallow is sugar, okay? And what's happening is while it's melting, the sugars can start to burn, and we want to avoid that. So you're going to constantly mix. You can use either a really sturdy rubber spatula, right? If you're using a rubber spatula, you want something that's nice and sturdy. If it's not sturdy enough, it's just going to kind of bend and move. It's going to be really hard to mix. Or you can use a wooden spoon. Wooden spoon is perfectly acceptable and fine as well. All right, so at this point, this is starting to get really nice and melted down, okay? You want to stir constantly while this is happening. You don't want to walk away. If you walk away, you will start to burn. Make sure you're scraping the sides as much as possible, okay? And then once this is completely melted, which it's just about there now, I'm going to turn the fire off, and I'm going to add the cereal into the pot. And now we just start to turn and really incorporate all that marshmallow into the cereal. And again, this is why it's so important to have a good, sturdy rubber spatula or wooden spoon. And all of those sides scraped down. Really getting that nice and incorporated. And the marshmallow has got a couple of different functions here, right? Obviously it's adding flavor and sweetness, but it's also the glue that holds this entire thing together. So a little bit different than the Scotch Crispy from the first recipe, which the peanut butter and the butterscotch are really holding everything together. Here it's the marshmallow. All right, so once this is nice and incorporated, it'll look just like that. I've got a quarter sheet pan here. So now the sheet pan that you use and how much cereal you're using all makes a little bit of a difference. All right, so I want the full thickness of the pan. So I'm going to use a smaller pan because that's going to make me have a little bit of a thicker Rice Krispie treat. All right, so go ahead and get all of that out onto the pan. And once this starts to cool, it will kind of start to stick together, right? So we want to make sure, work pretty quickly to get it out of the pan. Scrape it all down. All right, now at this point, I'm going to use the back of that spatula to just start pressing it out. All right, and once it's fairly even, I'm going to go ahead and grab another piece of paper. And you can see why my father is the pastry chef and I'm not. I didn't spray the paper before. That's why it's moving so much. And go ahead and grab that piece of paper. And I'm just going to start to kind of mold it into the pan a little bit. Trying to get a nice, even consistency. A little spot in the corner there, which I do have a little bit of cereal left. I'm going to go ahead and add that in. Just grab another spoon. Marshmallows very, very sticky, right? So you definitely want to make sure you have tools around to work, not using your hands. You can if you put a glove on. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and let that start to cool. Room temperature is fine. All right, so we'll let that cool at room temperature. And then once it's nicely set, we'll be able to go ahead, remove the paper, turn it out onto a cutting board and cut it. And we'll show you that in just. All right, so our Rice Krispie treats and our Scotch Krispies are all ready for cutting. So we're going to show you now how to cut those.
You gonna talk?
I'll do some talking while you do some working. That's fine. All right, so here we have our Rice Krispie treat. Ready to go. Cutting board set up. Got a chef knife. All right, just going to work the knife around the edge. All right, which is just going to help to make sure that it doesn't stick at all. And then it should, as it did, pop right out onto the board. All right, so you're going to peel the paper off.
It's not too badly squared off already. Except for that end.
All right, so at this point, if you need to, you take a look at it, decide if you're going to square it off. This looks like it's pretty good. So you're going to figure out exactly how many pieces you're going to cut out of it. And then you're going to go ahead. All right, so he's marking off for his cuts.
Trim that right there.
All right, so that's probably the best part right there when you're working with it, because those are snacks. So you push those off to the side so that when you're done, you have a little something you can snack on. And notice he's going to cut in half first, and then go ahead and cut that into even pieces or thirds, depending on the size that you're looking on. so there you have your Rice Krispie treat. So at that point now you can go ahead and move that to a platter, which we just happen to have handy. Now this is just a plain Rice Krispie treat, but what else could we add to this if we wanted to?
Oh, I mean, you can dip them. You can drizzle chocolate on them, dip them in chocolate. When you're making them, you could always add chips into the mix. Just be careful because it's hot, so you don't want to add it too soon. Or then you'll have swirls of chocolate instead of chips. And you can add, you can put sprinkles and chocolate. And if anybody ever watched Cake Boss, that's how he makes most of his cakes.
Now, could you do anything else? Do you have to use Rice Krispies to do a cereal treat like this?
You could use other things. You could use like Cocoa Krispies. You could use Frosted Flakes, stuff like that. Corn Flakes.
All right, so you really could use just about anything. Anything would kind of work. You'd get maybe a little bit of a different shape. I've seen these with Fruit Loops and things like that as well, which are kind of nice. All right, so we're going to go ahead now and move into our Scotch Krispie. I'm actually going to come to the other side because you are a lefty.
Yes, I am. All my life.
All right, so again, let's get a shot in there.
If you notice, the underside is nice, smooth.
So that's really your service side, would be the underside.
You can even use something like this to make a birthday cake.
And so again, squaring off. Definitely my favorite part right there.
And these are a little tougher to cut.
So these did go into the refrigerator for a little while just to help get them set. But then about 15 minutes before cutting, we took those out so that they could start to come back to room temperature a little bit, just to make it a little bit easier for cutting. And again, you'll pick the size that you want. So these, because these typically, the way we serve them, go onto a platter of cookies, we do tend to cut these a little bit smaller so that they're a little bit more 1 to 2 bite treat.
See, I was talking about how they tend to be difficult to cut.
So you see what he's doing? He's going through with the knife halfway the first time and then going back through a second time. If you try and cut these through in one shot, they will be a little bit more delicate and could possibly crack.
Like that one.
And so you can see it really is important with this to just let this kind of temper a little bit and get back into room temperature. And then here, get one last cut through. And there we have our squares. Now with the Rice Krispie treat, something that you could do this time of year, they actually sell the Rice Krispie treat in white, green, and red for the holiday season. So if you wanted to do more of a holiday treat, you could go ahead and buy those and use those instead. Going to be a little more decorative, just using the cereal itself. All right, so these are fairly easy treats to make, really delicious. People do tend to really enjoy these kinds of treats. All right, so give these a try. They will be delicious. People will enjoy them, I promise you. All right, Chef, we thank you very much for helping us out today.
My pleasure.
And we'll talk to you again soon.
Very good.